So, I was to say good morning, but good afternoon, good day. I'm very happy to see you here. I'm very happy to see my French colleague here. We have just had a really good lunch and discussing the many important questions. And I had the opportunity to talk about the Swedish presidency and what will be the priorities during our presidency. So just let me start with to say that Europe is in a difficult situation, as you all know, by the Russian aggression war against Ukraine. And that will be, of course, of huge importance during the Swedish presidency. So we will focus a lot of how to continue the support to Ukraine, both when it comes to military, humanitarian and economical support. We have been discussing that, and also to keep up the unity within the EU. And then the Swedish presidency also will focus on green transition, and when it comes to energy also we have had a discussion where we can say that France and Sweden has a lot in common. We have been discussing that. And then I also had the opportunity to put forward one of the priorities that has been for the Swedish government is when it comes to competitiveness and growth and resilience, that we also have been, that we share a lot of common interest. And then, of course, as colleagues of the General Affairs Council, we, of course, have had a discussion about rule of law, which is one of the points that well, I'm new on the council, but that you have been discussing, and that we will fulfill and discuss also during the Swedish presidency. But I'm very happy that you are here and looking forward to see each other even more, both as soon as possible and during the Swedish presidency. Thank you.
No, thank you. I'm also very happy to be here. For my first and certainly not the last visit to Sweden as a French minister in charge of Europe. We had the pleasure of welcoming your Vice Prime Minister in Paris and your Foreign Minister, and I think me coming here is also a sign that we are going to work closely together. As you said, as Jessika said, we had a really nice lunch, not only because of the discussion, but also the food was delicious. Thank you for this. I think it's a testimony that we are working together very closely as trio of presidency between the Czech, the French, and now, French, Czech, and now Sweden. As Jessika was saying, it's obviously the first priority is to maintain unity and our robust and sustained support for Ukraine. And I think we're all very well aligned on this. And we will perhaps see each other on the 13th of December when France is holding a conference for Ukraine for the resiliency of the winter. But perhaps even before, we will see each other. As you were saying, we have in common the green transition, forestry issue as well. We're a few countries with very large forests, and we want to discuss about this. We also support a very strong and competitive industry, so that European industry, so that will be an very interesting aspect of your priorities. The promotion of rule of law and the respect, which was discussed in our first meeting at the General Affairs Council, is also something that is very dear to our heart and very important as the pillar of the value of the EU. So you see, we agree on nearly everything, and we'll be happy to work as well on the bilateral relationship and our strategic partnership for innovation and green solution. And thanks again, Jessika. It was fantastic to meet you here and your team as well.
So unfortunately not that sunny, but it was a little bit winter and all. There you see the snow.
Very nice.
We have better snow another day. But we can take questions, if there are any.
Yes. Thank you. Marc Préel for AFP News Agency. Minister Roswall, I was thinking you mentioned Ukraine as the top priority. Could you be more specific about what exactly you would like to achieve in the 6 months of your presidency? And for Mrs. Boone, my question is, what does it change that Sweden is backed up, the Swedish government is backed up by the Swedish Democrats Party for France? And what does it change in the wake of the presidency?
Should I start? So I see it like both to continue the unanimity. I think that France, during your presidency, was very fortunate, or not fortunate, they were very successful in starting to move EU forward very, very rapidly when it comes to sanctions and to give the support to Ukraine. And that is very important to continue this unanimity. And so in the short term, I think it's important that even before Christmas or as soon as possible have a macro economical support to Ukraine for the next year. And also to give support for reconsideration for the Ukraine in a long term, because this will take a long time. But so I think the conference that you are planning 13th of December will be of also importance to share. But as I said, also military support, it will be a lot of things that we will have to continue, but also build on this unanimity. So it's both short-term and long-term help and support to Ukraine.
So thanks. Yeah, I could repeat word for word what Jessika has been saying. I think Sweden France has always been very admirative of the capacity of Sweden to forge consensus, and especially when it comes to European Union matters. I was very impressed by how committed and enthusiastic, I should say, the Swedish presidency is about EU matters, and how Jessika explained to me that she wants to be very much leading a much more important presence of Sweden in Europe. So that and consensus makes us very optimistic about the outcome of the Swedish presidency.
And on the influence of the far right in Sweden, what does it change?
So I understand that so I speak under your control, but the way Sweden works is really by forging a consensus in Parliament before going to the variety, and believe me, there are quite a lot of councils in Brussels for the EU. And I am sure that you will be able to forge consensus on this. So we will wait and see and support when we have common interest, obviously.
Okay.
Hi, Carlotta Mortel for Radio France. I have a question for Mrs. Roswall. You both talked about renewables as being a priority. One of the issues is rare metals and mining resources. Sweden is sitting on a very large mining resources, and so I'm wondering if you discussed about this since it's a priority also for the European Union to be able to get this material. And then my question to Mrs. Boone is, you have a pretty broad vision of Europe, as I read an article that you wrote a few days ago where you didn't see only Europe as the European Union, since you were discussing about Ukraine and the Balkans and Norway, and these countries are not part of the Union. And Sweden and Finland today are not part of NATO. And so this is why I'm asking this question. What do you think about the fact that Sweden is discussing with Turkey on the NATO membership? And don't you think that the European Union, or at least Europe as you intended, should also be part of this? Thank you.
Would you like to start, or should I start? Yes, start?
You're the host.
I am the host. So, yes, we talked about one of the priorities for the government is, and also during the presidency, is the green transition. And we discussed, so let me start by saying that during the presidency, we have counted 350 files. But one of them is the Raw Criterion Act, and we have actually one of the extant files that we discussed, not in detail, but I think, as you mentioned, it's important both on when it comes to green transition, but also when it comes to resilience for the Union. So it's important in both ways. So that will be one of the things that will be negotiated during the Swedish presidency.
Okay, so I think there were several questions in your one question. One is about NATO membership of Sweden, and obviously Turkey, like Hungary, are the two countries that remain to vote, I think, and everyone else have voted in favor of Sweden accession to NATO. We are, I think, two things. One is we are sharing really this idea of a very strong Europe in this world, geopolitics, tensions, everything that's happening is highlighting how strong Europe needs to be from an economic standpoint. And it also has a unique model, which is based on the rule of law, as we discussed earlier, but also on this market economy with a social model that I don't think you can find anywhere else. So we both want to preserve and promote that and make us stronger, because that's the way we will have an influence on the rest of the world. And as part of this, there is the European political community, which we discussed together, which is also this idea that we European, as on the continent, the geographic Europeans, need to maintain unity to preserve these values and this economic and social model. And I think both of us agree on this.
With relations with the NATO discussion, just the fact that Sweden is kind of on the front line by itself, talking to Turkey, and I'm just wondering, if there shouldn't be more maybe European help, pressure. Yeah,
I think there's European support quite a lot. It's in both our interests to have Sweden joining NATO and NATO being complementary to the EU defense policy. So this is part of the thing that we will be working on as well.
Hungary, Minister Boone. The EU Commission is to decide next week on giving Hungary or not billions of euros as part of the recovery package. Considering Hungary has been blocking a lot of issues recently, the Ukraine Recovery Fund and various measures like that, you mentioned NATO, should this money be validated by Brussels according to France and Sweden?
So we are, the Commission, as far as I know, has not presented their report yet, but they will be, and I'm looking forward to read what that said. So the discussion will be on the ECOFIN in 2 weeks, maybe. We will, well, the correct answer today is that we need to see the Commission's report on the questions. And we have, of course, discussed maybe not that question in detail, but we had discussed the rule of law and the conditionality. That is very great importance and principles that we totally agree on, and we would like to move on for.
So yeah, as Jessika says, we're waiting for the Commission's evaluation, so that which should arrive in about before the end of the month, hopefully. I think that perhaps 2 or 3 precisions to give in answering your question. One is there is the conditionality mechanism, which is about the funds, the cohesion funds, as you know, and the other one is the recovery plan. In none of the cases, the discussion before the end of the year is about disbursing money. In the recovery plan, the case is to whether we adopt the plan or not. And in that case, there will be targets and targets to be achieved before there is some disbursement. And on the conditionality mechanism, so we don't know yet what the evaluation of the Commission will be. But I think we will be deciding the 26th of us what that means. And again, I think there's a strong consensus about preserving the rule of law in our community, since that I think is the right word.
Exactly. Okay, thank you very much. And again, thank you for coming. And we'll see each other soon.
Thanks for the hospitality.
Thank you.